So we're just going to take a couple minutes today and talk about that. Please include in the chat all of any ideas that you have, because we're all learning together about things that you have done for your students at your school, or you have done for your teachers at your school as well. We would love to see your comments. So the first thing that we need to do is to help students identify their emotions and create a space where students feel safe to express their emotions. This, for the younger students, might look like feeling cards or sentence starters, helping them to verbalize what it is that they are actually feeling. And for older students, sometimes journal activities can be the way to go, or surveys to help them just articulate what it is that is in their hearts and identify the emotions that are welling up inside. Next is to show students empathy and teach students to have empathy and compassion for others. Teaching them just what empathy is and how it's very different than sympathy. A couple of activities or things that a teacher might do is teach active listening. Teach students that listening to answer or to reply is very different than listening to understand, and modeling that in the classroom, so that not only do students feel heard, but then they learn to actually truly hear others as well. We need a lot more of that in the world today. Activities such as perspective taking. There's an activity called the shoe activity, where students draw on a situation that is challenging for them, and they actually draw the shoes of each of the people who are involved, and metaphorically step into each one of these shoes and take the perspective of that person and empathize what they might be feeling. This seems so simple, but being patient with students. And not just that, because I'm sure you're patient with all of your students, but helping students practice patience with themselves. They are no doubt feeling the learning gaps and deficits themselves. And teachers, I don't know about you, but are you practicing patience with yourselves right now, with all of the technology challenges that you are facing and all of the things that have come up last minute? Also modeling patience with yourself. For instilling a belief in students that they can be a part of the solution, and providing whatever ways we can to help them share their skills and talents to help others. When students are able to use what they're good at to help another student, it brings feelings of purposefulness, worthiness, and happiness. And lastly, resilience. Model resilience. Show students how to overcome life's challenges, the unfairness and the unknowns, and provide them with strategies to do so. Resilience is how we weather the storms in our lives and rebound after something difficult. When something negative happens, or we experience a challenge, like we just did at the beginning of this presentation, there is a moment when that challenge happens. There is a moment between the challenge and our reaction. And in that gap, in that moment, is when we choose how we will respond. And masters of resilience are masters of mastering that moment and choosing well. And these are the things that we want to teach our students to do, is become masters of those moments after difficulties and in making decisions on how they respond. Elena Aguilar wrote a wonderful book called Onward, and it is all about building resilience in educators. All of these ideas, however, translate to students as well. The premise is that we all need to understand, and we all need to remind our students that we have things that we can control, and we have some other things that we can definitely have influence on. But there are many things that we cannot control. And so keeping our students focused on what they can do, what they can control, and what they can possibly have influence on is our focus here. I know one of you, or some of you mentioned, things like, how do I get students to turn the camera on? How do I encourage them to do this or that? It may be in your influence area to, get that student to be comfortable enough to turn their camera on if that's what you are trying to do, and it may not. I'm going to just go through a few steps that she mentions in her book on how to build resilience. And so these are some things that you can work on with students. The very first thing she talks about is that we really just need to know ourselves. So in knowing ourselves, we can navigate the world a little bit better because we know how we're probably going to react and respond. We know our strengths, we know our weaknesses, so we make choices based on truly knowing ourselves. I know that I handle things very differently than Jessica, and she handles things very differently than me. So in moments of panic, in technology panic, when we have stresses there, I know that I will react very differently than she will react. And simply knowing that helps me get to the next moment. And so a personality quiz will be included in some of our resources as well. That is very fun. I encourage you to take part in that. 2 is just understanding emotions, which we've talked about, and that emotions are not permanent, and getting students to understand where those come from by talking it out and by making it okay to talk about emotions and feelings in a productive way. She also talks about telling empowering stories. You know that YouTube video or that TED Talk that makes you cry and just feel so good because it's about a wonderful person doing something wonderful, or it is about a kindness or compassion that you don't see often and you just tear up. We need those stories right now, and so do our students. So any of your books that you have on your shelf or any videos that you find that just speak to our hearts, we need those, and so do our students. Building community in whatever ways possible, whether virtually or in person, connecting our students with other students and helping them find common ground. Perhaps that's in their feelings about the situation, or just common ground in their lives so that they feel connected to others because of the feeling of disconnect that is out there right now. Then she tells us that we have to be in the here and now. And what she means by that is simply being present. We have a tendency, especially when we're behind a screen, and students too, which is why it results in low engagement, we tend to disconnect and live a little bit in our heads and not be fully present. It takes an active choice to be fully present. And in being fully present, we can bring humor into the situation and bring humor into our classrooms and be silly and laugh. Being silly and laughing is not my natural state, but bringing it to my students, to the classroom, is would be so powerful to take advantage of those moments. Taking care of ourselves. This sounds like everything else on the list, so very simple. When we cut ourselves, or when our students cut their fingers, they know to put antiseptic and then a Band-Aid. But when we hurt on the inside in a different way, we many times, and our students don't know what to do, or they think that it will fix itself, and resilient strategies help fix that. Next is focus on the bright spots. This sounds trite, but it is truly a habit that we can help our students focus on in perspective taking, walking through a situation and looking at it from 2 points of view, and helping them choose the lighter, brighter perspective. Cultivating compassion, we talked about with empathy, just continually building that, but also being a learner. And our students are learners, we're learners as teachers, but what she means by that is just demonstrating curiosity, asking questions, and being alive. That's what being alive really is asking questions and being curious, and building that in our students. There was a comment that I read that one of you shared about children playing. And playing and creating is so important right now, and it is missing in our students' lives. So creating situations in which play and games are part of our everyday, and tapping into students' creativity is part of what we do. Next is riding the waves of change, and this may be in storytelling, in taking a look at different characters and how they react to different situations, or how they react to change, in order to show students that we all experience change, and it is in our response to it where we really find ourselves and we head in that direction. And lastly, but not least by any means, at this point, we need to, and our students need to, celebrate and appreciate every moment we can, whenever we can.